Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, Friday, March 26th, for our Lunch and Learn Mental Health Strategies, part of our HR series presented by Ms. CJ Petitt. With over 20 years of boots on the ground human resource experience, CJ is a certified senior professional in human resources. She understands the law and she knows employer solutions that work. For those of y'all not familiar with Texas State SBDCs, we offer comprehensive training and business related advising to small business owners and entrepreneurs. The advising services are at no cost due to federal, state, and locally funded. So if you are not taking advantage of our services, I highly recommend that you sign up to become an SBDC client. If you are not, don't worry. At the end of this, I'll be sure to include a link to sign up as an SBDC client. Couple of housekeeping rules. If you have any questions, please be sure to drop them in the chat box. We will have time for a Q&A at the end. And any slides or handouts, we'll be sure to send those to you via email at the end of this workshop. Go ahead, CJ.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I just want to say that I'm not just a presenter. I am a customer. Several years ago, when I decided to go into business, I received services from two amazing small business advisors, and they have been extremely instrumental in helping me along in my journey. I used to tell people who my small business advisor is, but her calendar kept getting booked up, so I don't give her name out anymore. Just want to say that it is well worth the time that it takes to get signed up as a client, because it definitely helps as you follow this journey into being a small business and an engine in our economy. Today, we're going to talk about kind of a really tough topic, very sensitive, a lot of stigma that goes along with it, unfortunately. And yet, the truth be told is that most people at some point in their life, and probably within the last year, has had some sort of mental issue in terms of dealing with anxiety, depression, financial issues, personal issues. It's been a really tough year. And for small business owners, it's even worse, because not only are you dealing with your own issues, but you're trying to figure out, how do I run a business with employees who are also having mental health issues? So I know it's a tough topic, but hang in there with me. I'm hoping that you're going to feel a little, sensitivity towards the subject matter and recognize that it's important, and that as a small business owner, this information is critical to you being able to manage your employees. So we already gave my bio, so I'm going to skip right through that. And just say that what we're going to talk about today are basic mental health issues in the workplace. We're going to talk about the signs of when an employee is in crisis. We've seen some stuff on the news, and it is very rare that there are no warning signs that a person is losing the battle with their mental health wellness. And so we're going to talk about, how can you, as an employer, read those telltale signs, and then what do you do about it? How do you keep your workplace safe? And what are some tools that you can use to get help for your employees? So the first thing is recognizing symptoms. And I'm going to tell you right here and now, this is the toughest part of this presentation, because it's stuff that's really tough to talk about. COVID has really overwhelmed a lot of Americans with mental health crisis. And what we've been dealing with are two public emergencies. One is the pandemic, but the other is all the emotional fallout from the pandemic, from people losing their jobs or trying to figure out how to work safely, teaching their kids at home, trying to keep themselves safe, managing how to take care of their kids, their parents, their families, and it's been much too much. Thing is that negative emotions are contagious in the workplace, and they can lead to your employees being anxious and hyper vigilant and making poor decisions. Maybe you've had an employee for a while and all of a sudden they're acting really kind of a little bit wonky. Well, it could be that they're just emotionally, mentally, spiritually just burnt out. And in fact, um, studies are showing that nearly 1 in 5 people who have had COVID-19 have experienced some sort of psychiatric um, disorder like anxiety, depression, or insomnia within 3 months. And for almost 6%, this was their first time ever having a mental health diagnosis. So people who were not struggling with mental health before COVID are finding themselves struggling with it now, especially if they were one of the victims of COVID. What happens is over the course of the last year, people kind of like were living in a little bit of denial, and we got this isn't going to be a big deal, this is going to go away. And we entered in kind of like a honeymoon phase where, okay, then we're going to just listen, we're going to go into lockdown, we're going to lock this out, and then we're going to get back to normal. Somewhere in the middle of last year, the reality of the situation really set in. People thought maybe everything would get back to normal once school started, and a real level of COVID fatigue began to set in uh, towards August, September of last year. And that COVID fatigue has just stuck around because right when we think things are getting better, we get kind of bad news. And so people are really just, sometimes they're in almost like a state of numbness about what they're going to do next. And so I want to go through this. And again, this is a tough subject, but we've got to talk about it, right? I want you to be able to recognize when you yourself or your employees are in crisis. Anxiety produces a response that's fight, flight, or freeze. Used to, we would hear fight or flight, right? But it's really fight, flight, or freeze, where we either run away from a situation, or people become aggressive, or they just shut down. 40 million adult Americans have some sort of anxiety disorder, and it is the single most common mental health condition in adults. And so if you're feeling anxiety yourself, you're not alone. If your employees are feeling anxiety, they're not alone. Here are some of the symptoms: panic, fears, insomnia, irritability, maybe panic attacks with rapid breathing, sweating, just a general sense of nervousness or restlessness, and worrying, rumination. Maybe you're staying up at night or waking up at night worrying about things that are out of your control or seem out of your control. So depression is the kind of like the twin of anxiety, and a lot of times they go hand in hand. And all of us have good days and bad days, but depression is when people have an ongoing sense of sadness, numbness, disinterest in anything that can last days, weeks, or months. Over 7% of the US population has at least one major depressive episode has had in the last year. And honestly, I really think that number is much higher. And so depression means that you just kind of lose interest, energy, worrying, guilt, feelings of hopelessness, just emptiness, changes in appetite, maybe eating too little than too much, and then perhaps feelings or thoughts of self-harm. And so that's when people start going down that slippery slope of depression. And somebody, just so you know, somebody might toggle. Maybe one day they feel really anxious, the next day they feel depressed. It's not one or the other. Part of this is that a lot of folks have got trauma. This is true of a lot of veterans. PTSD is real. The struggle is real. And what happens is that people walk around in a fight, flight, freeze mode all the time. Noises trigger them, events trigger them, large crowds maybe. I don't know if you've ever known anyone. I've had friends, they don't like to sit with their back to the door. If they go in a restaurant, they want to sit with their back to the wall because they want to keep an eye on the front door. They want to know who's coming, who's going, and where people are. And a lot of times that's just a sense of hypervigilance that comes from trauma or perhaps PTSD from when they were serving in the military. 7 to 8% of people are diagnosed. The issue is that with PTSD and trauma, the effects could appear years after the fact. And so I think sometimes I wonder if in the age of COVID, maybe people already had some sort of trauma in their background, and that maybe the fatigue that set in with COVID triggered, issues that they hadn't thought about in years, or it triggered some sort of trauma that maybe they weren't even really aware of. And that can be really scary. And so with trauma, you'll see just a variety of issues: anger, anxiety, depression, flashbacks, insomnia, just continually feeling on guard, disconnected from other people. They feel alone. They feel like they're the only ones that's going through this. And so they just kind of withdraw from their loved ones. Substance abuse is another issue, and this is the last issue that we're gonna talk about. There are many other issues, but we're gonna hit the high points of what might be going on in your workplace. Studies have shown that 2020 was one of the highest years on record for deaths due to overdose, substance abuse. So people who were already struggling with a substance use disorder, COVID triggered them in a way that just kind of spiraled. So folks who maybe had not used in a number of years started using. And the way that it works is that people will start having intense urges to use substances. Maybe they spend a lot of time thinking about how it would feel, where could they get it. They feel like that that it's a need, and then they start their sleeping habits, their appetite changes. And when they really need help is if they are full on addicted, and when they start having serious physical reactions to withdrawing, then it's time for them to for sure get professional help. So I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, in the chat, Have you seen any of these issues play out in your workplace? Feel free to share your stories. Um, so let me just read here real quick. So I think someone wrote, I think the number of mental health diagnosis has also been impacted by people with undiagnosed mental health issues that were exacerbated by COVID. And the increase in mental health conversations and access to support during these periods, and companies being on the lookout for the signs. Absolutely great input. Maybe somebody was struggling with mental health issues or anxiety, depression, but the COVID just brought it out even more. Maybe they had a strategy. You know, sometimes you have a strategy for dealing with mental health issues. Like maybe you like to get together with friends or go for a long walk or go to the beach with your friends. And then all of a sudden COVID interrupts that. And COVID kind of took our lifelines away from us, things that we do that help us feel better, help us, get through the day. All of a sudden, a lot of those things that feed us, feed our souls, were all of a sudden, taken away. And not to mention financial and familial issues. So feel free to, as we're going through here, to chat if you start recognizing some of these things in your employees. You're like, oh, wait a minute. We have a comment here. A coworker says there's a new term, pandemic brain, and I totally get that. Right. And I think, honestly, I think it's going to take time for people to get over that pandemic brain, because it's almost like a form of trauma in and of itself, all the things that people have experienced in the last year. So what I want to do now is talk about how can you tell if an employee is in crisis, because you might have an employee who is having a bad day, but there are some telltale signs that you need to pay attention to, that somebody might be ready to snap. And here's the secret sauce. People do not typically just snap out of nowhere. There are telltale signs leading up to employees who snap, and we unfortunately just don't pay close enough attention to know what it is that we're looking at. So here's some telltale signs. Employees who are resistant or overreact to any kind of changes, policies, procedures. You change one little thing and they just go ballistic about it. Any little change, any little request to do something different, do something extra, and they are furious and they're ruminating about it, right? They just can't let it go. Unexplained absenteeism and vague physical complaints. Somebody starts missing work, calling in sick. They have vague physical pain complaints, meaning like, I've got a headache, I don't feel well. Those kinds of things are telltale signs that the stress is starting to impact them physically. Their mental health is impacting their physical health. And that is a sign that they are starting to go into crisis. If an employee changes their appearance or hygiene, we all have those employees that like to go too casual. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody who, before COVID, dressed professionally, and now maybe they have disheveled hair, or their hygiene isn't what it used to be. And basically what you're looking for are telltale signs that somebody has stopped taking care of themselves. That means they're too depressed or too anxious to really care about um, the work that it's going to take to go into hygiene and self-care. And that is when that's a very good telltale sign that somebody is in crisis. So here's a telltale sign that somebody is very much in crisis. They're not just kind of sliding off the deep end, they have slid. Severe mood swings. Maybe they're laughing the first part of the day, crying the second part of the day, and yelling at somebody at the end of the day. Anger outburst out of nowhere, no provocation. Maybe somebody's having domestic problems. Like, let's say, and this is something I want to say that some of the HR rules have changed in 2020 for the better. Before 2020, it was almost a no-no to ask employees, how are you doing? How's your family? How's your kiddos? How's school going? Right? We really didn't get into that, asking people, how are they doing, and really meaning it, right? In the age of COVID, we have to do that. How are you doing? How's your spouse? Here's the thing is, if you've got an employee who is teleworking and their spouse has been laid off and is depressed and their kids are going to school virtually, that employee could easily be having domestic and financial problems at the same time. They're just being stretched too thin. So a lot of people, maybe they kept their job, but their spouse lost their job. And so their family income just got cut in half. As, as a small business owner, you want to know those kinds of things. And if you know it, you need to understand that that employee is probably in crisis, even if they're not saying it. Does that make sense? And so, in the age of COVID, don't be shy about asking, how's your husband? How's your wife? How are things going? How are you managing? And really take their temperature from a holistic perspective, not just how are you specifically doing, but how is your family doing? So here's some other signs that you can tell. Depression and withdrawal. People don't want to talk, they don't want to interact, they avoid, they isolate. Maybe they're, increased use of alcohol. I know that alcohol sales were up quite a bit last year. I don't know about this year, but a lot of people to cope fell back onto drugs and alcohol, which I mean is just the human condition. But if somebody is already struggling with a substance abuse, that could be the thing that pushes them over the edge to where they defeat a lot of work that they've done. Paranoia is a big one. If someone acts angry and paranoid, everybody's out to get me, they're spending a lot of time on conspiracy theories. um, that could be a sign that they're going over the edge. And also pay attention to comments about that could indicate suicide. Here's the thing is that there's a lot of people that think that people who are suicidal walk around with a banner that says, hey, I'm suicidal. But that is exactly opposite of the truth. People who are truly suicidal don't tell anyone. They just do it. So you have to pay attention to nonverbal cues and little comments that somebody might make that tells you that maybe they need help immediately. So I know, how many of y'all are already feeling kind of depressed just going through this? Right? You want to raise your hand? You're like, oh, I don't want to hear about this. And And I don't like talking about this either because, number one, it's the sadder side of the year that we've been through. It's tough and it can trigger us. We may be feeling fine ourselves, holding ourselves together, but if we're supporting a group of employees who are in crisis, it's going to impact us personally. And so I want to encourage you as business owners, possible HR professionals, to take care of yourself. Self-care is super important. We're going to talk about that as we go through the presentation. Let's go through one more slide about the telltale signs. Nonverbal cues, we talked about that. Somebody, they're avoiding people. They're not looking them in the eye. They're not conversing. Pupil dilation, that's a sign that somebody is triggering for aggression. Jaw thrust, another sign of anger. Nostril flaring, tightening up, chest puff. Ocular orbital tension is where you look in somebody's eye and you can see that their blood veins are kind of pooched out. You can see maybe they've got a vein in their forehead, and you can tell that they are physically under stress and tension. So I want to talk about a weirdo thing called, I don't want to call it weirdo, but it's the name doesn't sound like what it is. It's called blading. So blading is a sign of aggression. Basically, it is a body posture. Blading means that when somebody puts their foot one behind the other, kind of a shoulder distance apart, and that they're moving back and forth, they are kind of bracing themselves for a physical altercation. And in fact, here in Texas with open carry, you're going to find that it just kind of is a subconscious thing for people who open carry to get into that blade position where you're just kind of standing. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever seen a Western where, somebody is kind of positioning themselves to be able to fight back. That is what blading is. I know it's kind of weird. And so so those are some telltale signs that somebody is fixing to be aggressive. And so pay close attention to that. Okay, so what do you think? Is everybody on board? You're like, oh my gosh, I feel so depressed right now just talking about it. But wait, there's hope. Okay, let's talk about what we can do about it, because there is help. You can get help for yourself and for your employees. So number one, if you do have an employee in crisis and you can tell, okay, this person is fixing to blow, or maybe you've got somebody who's in crisis, but you need to have a tough conversation with them about their performance, for example. Don't do it alone. If you need to present difficult news, bring in a coworker, a manager, security, and think through the safety aspects of your, it's like safety staging, right? Once upon a time, I had an HR friend who had to let somebody go, and she was behind her desk. He was on the other side, of course, on the door was right behind him. He got mad, and the only thing between him and her were office supplies, and he grabbed the scissors and tried to come after her. So think that through. If you've got an employee on edge, do not take for granted any aspect of the safety situation of talking with them, because you don't know how somebody who's in crisis is going to react to perceived bad news. If there's an escalating situation, maybe you've got an employee that you're trying to talk to, but they're starting to yell at you, they're starting to get really kind of show signs of aggression, Don't say, hey, let's go into my office and let's talk about this one-to-one. That puts you in a very unsafe predicament. You need your people around you. I know that it's like you want to try and keep things from being embarrassing for other people, but your number one priority is safety. So make sure that if somebody's disgruntled, that you don't pull them into a private room and never be alone one-on-one with somebody that you think is going over the edge. That's not safe for either one of them. So when you're dealing with somebody who's angry, the last thing that you want to say, now think about this. How many of y'all have been angry and your spouse or one of your friends has said, just calm down. You're overreacting. You're being irrational. How does that make you feel? How many people have ever said, yeah, you're right. I am being irrational. I'm sorry. Does that ever happen? If it does, then you need to write a check because I never heard of it. So when somebody is angry, avoid telling them to calm down. The best thing to do is just to let them vent. Trying to cut them off, trying to tell them to be rational, telling them that let's just talk about the facts. You cannot meet emotion with facts. It just logic, for whatever reason, does not calm down an irrational person or an angry person, right? So your best bet is to go ahead and let them vent and, and sympathize with them. You don't necessarily have to sympathize to the point of, you're right, you were picked on, but just give them the chance to get that emotion off their chest. That is how you de-escalate. So what you want to do is, Deidre made a really good point. Let someone air out their grievance. Don't add any fuel, right? So what you don't want to say is, oh my gosh, no wonder you're angry about not getting a raise. That was such a ripoff, right? Because really you're adding fuel to the fire. Sympathize with them to the point that, I understand how you're feeling and that must be very frustrating, and let them get it off their chest. And then at the point that they're calm, then you can go back and talk more about facts or have a further conversation. When somebody's angry, that's not the time to try and reason with them or tell them to calm down and move on with the conversation. Here's some tactics though for making sure that you get safe. It's almost like, I think of Tiger King, right? It's like you've got to have something between you and the other person. It may be a chair, it may be a desk, it could be anything. You could say, man, I'm feeling so tired. Pull a chair over and lean on it like you're tired. But don't let the only thing between you and the door be that angry person. And don't let the anything between you and the other side of the desk be a pair of scissors. Think through what you're going to do. Have other people there. Don't try and pull somebody into a room alone, and make sure that you are closest to the door so that you have an escape hatch. If somebody really starts directing their anger at one specific person and they're becoming threatening, physically threatening, then it's time to get help. A lot of people, they don't want to feel embarrassed by having to call the police or call security. But if it goes too far to where it's really being directed at one person and it's becoming violent, then get help from law enforcement. So destroying property, physical threats, trying to throw punches, throwing punches, that's imminent danger. Call 911. But One of the most important things that you can do is workplace training. OSHA likes to see every employer include a workplace violent session in their emergency safety plans. And so train all of your employees on safety protocols. It will make them feel better. In fact, this slide deck will be available to you after the session. And it wouldn't hurt my feelings if you use this slide deck to present to your employees so that they can keep an eye out for each other and that they know how to handle different situations. Have an emergency safety plan. OSHA provides free templates, and basically you walk through what do we do in different scenarios. It's more important now than it ever was before to see the telltale signs of workplace violence and to know, you and your employees to know how to respond to unsafe situations and practice drills. A lot of people are teleworking, but it's still an opportune time for you to gather your employees, even if it's on Zoom, and review your emergency action plan, safety plan. And then one of these days, people are going to start going back into the offices. They're going to be interacting with each other, and everything from COVID to politics to uh, vaccines and just the loss that people have had over the last year could make for some pretty tense situations. So training, communication, those are your friends. So now let's talk about, by the way, does anybody have any questions so far? Feel free if you've got a question, comment, feel free to chat. I'll give you opportunity for questions at the end as well, so everybody can unmute at that point. But what I really want to talk about is, what do you do about it? So here are some mental health tools, and I'm giving you some examples from San Antonio, but I want you to know that these benefits are statewide, and these are tools that you can use no matter where you are in the state of Texas. For starters, the state has ample opportunity for mental health tools. What you can do though is that you can take a look and see what you already have. Take a look and see, do you offer mental health benefits in your group insurance policies? Maybe do a training session to let employees know what their mental health benefits are and encourage them to use them. Also, you may have mental health benefits that are tacked on as just a added benefit on your health insurance, disability carriers, payroll companies. A lot of these companies have a value added module called an employee assistance program. The employee assistance program is helpful because it offers solutions for not just mental health, but financial health and legal assistance. And so what I'd like to see every employer do is to have an EAP. So if you don't have an EAP, I would encourage you to check into it. It provides a good benefit in addition to health benefits. If your employees have been laid off, they would likely qualify for healthcare marketplace with a subsidy. I've seen people, they get healthcare at zero cost. And of course, with the new stimulus, employees who are out on COBRA due to no fault of their own, their COBRA premiums will be covered by the stimulus. And so take a look at that. If you've got employees who are out on COVID because they were laid off, do your homework, because the stimulus will help pay for their COBRA, and that can helps you out, that helps them out. So if you've got an employee that doesn't have healthcare insurance, get them over to healthcare.gov and get them to consider applying and seeing if they could qualify for a subsidy, because those benefits come with healthcare benefits. They have to. That's a minimum essential benefit. So consider contracting an EAP separately. The cost is $35 to $50 per employee per year. That's nothing, right? And it helps with everything from personality conflicts, drug addiction, mental health, caregiving issues, family legal advice, financial counseling, grief counseling. It provides a whole host of services for your employees. And, I would just love to see every small business have an EAP. Here's a kind of like a breakdown of the types of issues that this service is used for. One is relationship issues, financial issues, anxiety and depression, and substance abuse. So you're going to see that these are some very tough topics that a lot of people have endured over the course of the last year. And so I would highly encourage you to talk to your insurance agent or ask around for an EAP program that you could subscribe to. If not, there are services like Teladoc. Teladoc is $16 per employee per month, and part of their services is mental health care. And so even if you're so small that you can't afford to offer benefits to your employees, you may think about spending $16 per month so that they can get not just physical health benefits, but mental health benefits as well. And so think that through. That may be a worthy investment if you're seeing a real issue in your workplace. So let's see here. Carolyn Roy, two great examples of EAPs are provided by Morneau, Chappelle, and Cigna. From my experience, I would love to hear more about that once we open it up for questions and answers. And EAPs also support managers dealing with performance evaluations, change management, and layoffs. Love it. The EAP provides more services than just the mental health benefits that are provided in your insurance. And I just think every business should have an EAP. So now, if you do see an employee in crisis, what do? And you can tell this to your managers: 211, 211. That's all it takes. Tell your employees 211. They can get help anywhere in the state: food insecurity, housing, childcare, crisis counseling, substance abuse treatment. Here's the state of Texas. All the different regions within the state of Texas are contracted with local providers to help people who are in some sort of health or mental health crisis. So 211. I'm giving you an example from San Antonio. Austin would be different. Different cities and locations will be a little bit different, but I want to give you this as an example. So the state has contracted with the Center for Healthcare Services to provide mental health for San Antonio residents or Bexar County residents. They provide psychiatric evaluation, medical follow-ups, medication, wellness, counseling, and education, and individual and group therapy. If somebody has benefits, then they can tap into it with their benefits. If somebody does not have benefits, then they have a sliding scale. And in fact, even the city of San Antonio will subsidize so that it's free to somebody who needs help. And so take a look at, go to this website, 211texas.org, and take a look and see who is the service provider for your area, and then distribute this information to your employees. Your employees may not come to you and tell you, I'm in crisis. But what you could do is provide all employee training to let them know all of the ways that they can get mental health help. So also these services provide things like employment connections, resumes, interviewing, integrated care, holistic, comprehensive services. So you're not just going in for one thing or the other. They're really taking a look at, do you need medication, individual therapy, group therapy, classes? What do you need? And then for folks who need inpatient or ongoing mental health management, they have that available as well. And so, like I said, I'm showing you according to what's in San Antonio, but each area of the state is going to have a service like this that is just a phone call away. Here is a little, oh, you can't really see it. Here's a little flyer. I would highly encourage you, and I can send the wrap card for this with the slide deck. I would highly encourage you to provide this to your employees. It says, know the potential signs of mental health. This is something that you could give to your employees, to your managers, and then do a training session and talk to them about, do you have mental health benefits in your group insurance? Do you have an EAP? Is there a local service provider, or do they need to call 211 and get assistance with housing or financial support? Here are also some hotlines: the suicide prevention lifeline, crisis line for veterans, teen okay to talk. Teens have taken a big hit in the last year as well. And it's already hard to be a teen. Let's face it, high school can be pretty rough. Here's the other thing that I like: text signs to 741-741. And that helps you to get some assistance. So again, suicide prevention lifeline, veterans crisis line. And what you might want to do is take these posters and put them on your bulletin boards, so that they're just a constant reminder to employees that they're not alone, and that there is help. The problem is that you don't want to go up to someone and say, gosh, you look really bad. Should I call 211 for you? They're going to flip out, right? You've got to be careful about how you approach people. You can't say, you know what, you seem tired. Is everything going okay? You seemed a little stressed yesterday or overwhelmed yesterday. Is everything okay? But if somebody really is in having suicidal ideation, they're not going to say anything to you. And so what you want to do is really pay attention to those nonverbal cues and get this information out there, and keep it out there, keep it out in front of them. Maybe you could introduce some wellness apps. There's a COVID Coach mobile app. It's free. It talks about managing self-care and well-being. And so maybe you could encourage your employees to download the app, or maybe they could, talk with each other about goals and tracking their growth and that kind of thing. And so maybe that might be an option. Just let your employees know what tools are available that they could get on their own. And so now I want to watch a video, and I'm hoping that I did do this, get this share screen correct. So this is a video of having to do with the 211 number to help kind of educate you. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So let me go ahead and play the video.
What do you do when you want help, but don't know where to turn? What do you do if you cannot pay the utility bill and feed your family? As someone with a disability, where can you get help in accessing services in your community? Where do you turn if your child is in trouble? When you need help but don't know where to turn to 211. 211 helps you connect with over 60,000 health and human services across Texas. You are not alone. 211's helpline is free, confidential, and answered live by highly trained information and referral specialists. We are here 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, on the phone and online, and we provide services in over 90 languages. 211, Connecting People and Services, a program of the Texas Health and Human Services Commission.
Okay, so what would be wrong with
Thank you for calling.
what would be wrong with having employee training and what would be wrong with having employee training and sharing this video with your employees, right? So you're not pointing the finger at anyone, you're just providing information and education. And so here's my contact information. If you'd like more information or you see something, got a couple more questions, feel free to let me know. I do want to share, let me see if I can pull this up. So I recently, have y'all ever heard of Doug and Melissa Toys? So Doug and Melissa Toys is hang on, they wildly successful, right? They have more money than what you could ever think. But what we didn't know, thank you, Deidre. Ooh, she's reading my mind, yes. So I want to share this with you. I joined it to check it out, and I kind of really like it. So I don't know if you can see this, but let me see if I can. I'm going to close out some other to widen it here. Can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So secretly, Melissa has been suffering from anxiety and depression her whole life. She said that when she was in college, she walked around for a year with a cocktail of different prescription drugs that she knew that if she took, it would kill herself. She would kill herself. And that's how depressed she was. And she got on with her life, started Doug and Melissa. She got married to Doug, had 6 kids. But what she was finding is she had all this financial success, all this professional success. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but she was depressed to the point of being suicidal on the inside. So she kicked off just very recently, I think like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, this thing called Lifeline, and I've checked it out and I like it. It talks about bringing a group of people together to manage anxiety and depression. And so you see, you scroll through, and she structured it like as if it is an outdoor park. You begin the hike, and she talks about what it's all about. She talks about you're having a backpack and learning lessons called acorns and tracking how you feel, markers on how to proceed. They're constantly doing events. I was going to see workshops. And so you can see right here that they do a plethora of workshops. You sign up, it's free to sign up, and then you get access to different modules: body image, finding your light, finding meaning, martyrdom, self-worth, musical journeys. And they call them also campfire sessions. And I've attended a couple of these, and they actually are very informative. And Melissa attends them, this mega superstar, and she just keeps it real about what she was going through, right? And so what you might want to do is think about just introducing these kinds of programs, apps. Maybe get your employees, if they feel like that they want to join voluntarily, maybe they could do like a Zoom session to join in, or maybe discuss and say, you know, I learned something new that came helpful to me. And or maybe you could do, as a business owner, hey, let's have a mental health Friday to kick off the weekend. I saw something on Lifelines that really spoke to me, and I want to talk about it and get your input. You could do that on Zoom. And so it really is just a sense of being proactive, making sure that you're looking at your employees, that you're seeing them, you're listening to them, and you're observing for nonverbal cues that they're in crisis, that you're following up. If you have to, check with them once a day. How are you doing? Thank you for working here. I appreciate it. Maybe like a little free coffee, or maybe start, a group chat about mental health, and let them share their ideas and experiences. Like I was saying before, everybody's worried about HIPAA, and we don't want to force anyone to reveal any kind of into any kind of awkward situation. But just sharing the options that it's available, that's not a HIPAA violation. And so just letting people that they're not alone and giving them options is really critical to saving people's sanity. So I'm going to open it up. We're going a little bit over time. I apologize that Deidre had to leave, but let me tell you that I wanted to open it up for questions and answers, and everybody's welcome to unmute and let me know if they've need any additional information.
Thank you, CJ. Just a couple of things. On your chat box, I went ahead and threw in the survey link. So if you have a moment, please fill that out. It kind of tells us how we did, and if there's anything maybe in the future you would like to see. Again, if you're not an SBDC client, the link is right there for you to sign up. We will be having a newsletter coming out with some upcoming workshops. And again, another thing to being an SBDC client is we actually have CJ as a consultant for us. So if you are an SBDC client, you're able to utilize her service for free due to COVID funding, okay? If again, like CJ said, if it's a little bit easier, go ahead, please take yourself off of mute and ask any questions that you may have.
And like I said earlier, we'll be sending the slides out along with that wrap card as well. And I'll include in the slides the link to Lifelines as well, because that's just something that I just got into this just in the last week. I wanted to check it out. It looks good. I want to go ahead and include it in the slides. And so I'll make sure that once you get that, it's good, useful information for you.
Awesome. Thank you, CJ. I guess with that, if there are not any questions, we're going to go ahead and end it. Again, the email that's going out to y'all, it'll have CJ's contact information. So if you think of anything after this, feel free to email her, okay? Awesome.
Thank you so much. It was a crowd, but I hope you learned a lot.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great Friday.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thank you.